Today we'll be getting to know a nomad, and nomads can be a bit hard to define because they're people that have often gone to many different countries and have experienced a lot of different things throughout their life. I want to start by asking just, what is your name and what is the funniest word that you know?
My name is Eva, and the funniest word I know is really you really know how to ask tough questions. The funniest word I know is probably philosophy.
I like that one, yeah.
Yeah.
I love Sophie, I love wisdom.
Wisdom, yeah.
Have you ever, first of all, taken a 16 personalities test or a personality test? And what's your experience? Like, what did you get, or like, how do you feel when you get the results?
I've taken a DISC test, a DISC test, and I keep on getting a bit of everything, and like the outcome of it is being quite divergent in everything. Mm-hmm. I can see that, I acknowledge it a lot, but it's so frustrating because you don't really know what direction you're actually good at because you are so flexible.
Right. Yeah, and that's something I hear a lot from people who travel a lot, that they tend to develop a lot of different personality traits. So, like, do you feel like you are a little bit of everything, or do you feel like you have certain things that you do tend to be like better at, or things that people would often describe you as?
I do see myself being a very flexible person, very driven person, and if I do get a task, I do handle in a team, but I tend to take more initiative to be an individual in my tasks.
Yeah.
I think it also has to do a lot with trusting other people, because during your travels you have to let go of a lot of people, and you can't really build a relationship where somebody that comes from one town continues to build a relationship with the person that they know from a young age. And I think that has a lot to do with the trust issues and wanting to do everything on your own, because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, no one's going to do it. At least that's what's in your mind.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. When you go to something new, you kind of have to let go or leave some things behind as well.
Yeah.
So, like, what is a big change that you made in your life, and why did you make it, and like, how did you go about that?
Well, I think it started at a very young age. I was 4 years old when I moved from the Netherlands to South Africa.
Yeah.
And immediately I didn't know any English. I just spoke Dutch. And when I was 11, I moved back to the Netherlands, where it was a really big change. Even the change was even more drastic, because I was speaking English fluently. I was going to school and everything, and then all of a sudden I had to go to the school, learn Dutch all over again. And for the first 2 years it was really difficult. I would say that was definitely a change in my life.
Yeah, that was at a very young age, because that was kind of like pushed on you, I guess, by your family in a sense. Like, how did you feel about like making changes later on? Like, did you become more traditional because of that, or do you feel like you felt more of a tendency to wander?
No, I would say that stability is more or less not my comfort zone. It's more within me to make change and do change, because building things from the ground up is what I'm used to doing. It's kind of the complete opposite, actually.
Where are you on the stability and freedom like continuum? Like, do you feel like you're more of a person that tends to seek for stability, commitment, settling down, or do you feel like you still kind of search for new things, or like moving on to other things or learning new things?
Well, what I've noticed is that if it's a continuum and you keep on having to build things from the ground up, it's quite exhausting. So you need to come to that own self-awareness and actually realize what you want. And even though stability challenges me a lot, because it feels very unsettling for me, I do want to get to know it a bit more. I think life in general is about challenging yourself and actually stepping outside of your comfort zone in order to bring a positive change into your own life and also the life of the people around you. You can try to do things on your own all the time, but I bet most of us cry like almost every week because we feel lonely.
Yeah.
So I think in order for that to change and actually find that stability within people, find home within yourself, you'll have to step out of your comfort zone to actually get to know you a bit more.
Yeah, I can also imagine that because you've traveled and had to move, you kind of learned how you make new friends. You learned how to root yourself, how to find a place where you feel comfortable and so on. Like, what do you do when you, for example, when you came here? Like, when did you come here, and what did you do in order to kind of feel more comfortable here?
Well, I came to Spain 2 years ago almost, and I must say it's easy. It's easy trying to fit in. It's easy trying to make new contacts. What the real challenge is in my nomad brain is maintaining those relationships. I think after a 12-month period of really getting to know someone, I think that's when the graphic actually starts to go down in maintaining the relationship in general. I came here, I just want to change. The Netherlands is a great country and really well set off. I mean, you can phone the municipality and they help you out within 5 minutes. Yeah. It's unheard of here in Spain. I really miss that. But coming from South Africa and having lived in South Africa for 15 years in total, I miss the sun. I miss the spontaneity of the people, the warmness of the people. Not saying that the Dutch are not warm, because you can never generalize, but it is a different culture in comparison to South American and English culture. I have a South American background as well. So it's just a whole different world. Yeah. So I thought, well, let's meet halfway and go to Spain. Then it at least looks like Africa in some parts of it, but then a better economy.
So you say it looks a bit like Africa in some ways, right? Is that also, because I think sometimes it's nice to feel like recognition of things, right? A bit of nostalgia, I guess, but also just seeing things that you can kind of recognize. For me, it can be, I tend to go to the same cafes, find one place I really like, with where I know the people and the faces of the people that come there and the people that are there most often. So I guess there's something to that, like having those things that give you a bit of familiarity.
Definitely. For me, it's an Irish pub. I think
those are great.
Almost in every country you have an Irish pub.
Always.
But a toasted cheese or just an English breakfast just makes me feel a lot better. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. When it comes to languages, how many languages do you speak?
Sure. Okay. Let's be honest. There's a different level of every language.
Of course.
But I currently work fluent in German, Dutch, and English.
Yeah.
So that's my everyday language skill set. Then my Spanish would be like a B2 level, B2, a C1. Where my French is an A2 level, and I'm currently learning Russian. That's currently at an A1. And then I still have Afrikaans. I'm not fluent. I would say I'm like a C1, C2, because I keep on mixing the Dutch and German words in there.
Yeah.
So, quite many.
That's really impressive. A lot of people mention that when they use different languages or are in different cultures, their personalities also change. Have you noticed that yourself? That you changed a bit by coming to Spain, for example, and learning Spanish?
Definitely. I know Spanish from my household. We used to speak Spanglish at home, and it was a South American culture, yet a bit different to the Castilian culture or the Iberian culture. But yeah, my Spanish personality is I don't care. It's all simple and it's easygoing. Where my Dutch culture, my Dutch version of myself is quite secure and quite stern. Mm-hmm. You have to be, otherwise they'll eat you alive. And where my English is more held back, more reserved, more polite. And when I say held back and reserved, I mean really cautious of other people's feelings.
Right.
You really get more in touch with your empathic side in the English culture, I find. I think it's just a part of the culture.
Actually, that's so interesting because I kind of experienced it the other way around a bit. Because Swedish is my native language. Then I learned English. English became my extroverted language almost. So that's my creative language. I used it for YouTube videos, for blogging, and for connecting with people across the world. So it became something that I associated a lot with. New experiences. But otherwise, I think you're quite on point with, for example, Dutch. When I find myself using Dutch, I also find it's a more precise language and it's a little bit less empathetic compared to English, for example. because I do feel like I'm a lot more people-oriented in English, and in Dutch I'm a lot more work and formal in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how those associations also kind of start to pop up. And there's been studies that show that people get different personality tests, you know, depending on if they take a test in English or in Spanish or in Dutch, for example. So it's a funny experience to try. Like, what do I get if I answer it in this language? You know, especially I think you should take it in your main language or in your native language if you have one.
Yeah.
How would you say your personality has changed in the later years?
I think it depends on what life experiences that you go through. I think that's regardless of culture or languages or traveling in that case. I think what you experience in life changes you. I think I used to be more naive and believing the good in people, the kindness of strangers, where I think we all tend to trust people like we trust ourselves deep down inside. There's a saying in Dutch, I'll directly translate it. It's the host trusts its guests just the same as he trusts himself. So I think that's where we all set our expectations in people. And regarding your expectations in people, I think you'll get hurt. And the level of hurt that you have in your subconscious or your conscience, I think that changes you. It makes you be different, whether it's shielding off yourself and protecting yourself, or whether it's growth and actually telling people off and saying, no, that's not what I'm going to do this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like, you know, kind of the philosophy of Adler. He's a psychologist, and he's very much for individualism, right?
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about, you know, how you gotta be true to yourself, right? Like, go your own path in life and, you know, do what feels right for you. And I think it would be so much easier to deal with people if we knew that everyone was true to themselves and going their own way. And in some ways, you know, that would be a bit selfish, right? Because, you know, people would have their own motives and reasons for why they do things. But at the same time, you can kind of understand that, you know, they do the things that they do not to hurt me, but because, you know, that's their path in life and what they are doing and what's important to them in a sense. And often, like when I talk about personality psychology, it's because I want to spread understanding, right? In a sense that, you know, there's different ways of thinking about the world, you know, different ways of relating to people, different ways of communicating. And I think you talked a lot about flexibility in a sense here, in a sense of being able to adjust to the place you go to and who you talk to and so on, right?
Yeah, well, you have to. I think if you're not flexible enough when you're traveling, you kind of setting your expectations and you're actually setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
I've actually experienced a lot of Dutch people, for example. They've moved to Spain. They come here and then they expect just the same norms and values as in the Netherlands, and I don't understand that. And I don't understand it from my own point of view because of my life, because there's been so many changes. So I do understand that someone that has lived in the Netherlands for 25 years of their lives all of a sudden tries to immigrate, that they go back to their own country because they don't yet know, or it's not even put into their subconscious to be that flexible.
Yeah.
You have to give a lot of yourself every time you travel to a different culture, different place with different norms and values. I mean, and I think that also contributes to losing a piece of yourself.
Yeah.
As a nomad traveling around, I would say it's quite difficult to stay true to your norms and values.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we need to talk about more. It's normal. It's psychologically, it's proven that you're losing yourself because your day to day is not who you were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Your surroundings were more stable, where now your surroundings are not stable. And it might seem nice, all the freedom and spreading your wings and whatever saying is going to be found on Instagram to give positive vibes. I mean, it all helps.
Yeah.
But it's helping something, and I think that's something that why we see all those positivity posts. I think we need to talk about that black space, because we're always talking about moving each other forward and being positive and everything's going to be all right. But why aren't we talking about that empty hole?
I think that's a really, really nice point. We have to take time to introspect and also confront our own feelings about things and what we experience. And ultimately kind of find something core in ourselves, like a thing that is that we're always gonna be true to, some kind of rudder that we, navigate our life with, in a sense. So I want to ask you like one last question, and before I do that, just want to thank all of you viewers and subscribers, especially on Patreon, for making my work possible, and for being here. And of course, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. So my final question is, what would you say, something that you've never changed in yourself, like something you think you'll never change about yourself that you feel has been quite permanent in your life?
I think just looking good to feel good. Wash your face in the morning. Don't wear tracksuits every day. It just helps, especially on the down days, to get your dresses on, feel nice, make yourself feel nice, and treat yourself. Because if you feel good inside, you'll actually infect your surroundings with that feel good feeling.
That's a really good one, actually. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.